In June 1969, the World Cup qualifying match between the national teams of El Salvador and Honduras took place. This match became the reason for war between these states. The conflict went down in history as football war and claimed the lives of several thousand people. Why did this happen, and what does football have to do with it? Subscribe to Football Geeks and let's geek it out! As in all wars in the history of mankind, the beginning of the football war was preceded by a certain chain of important events, which led to the gradual increase in tensions between the countries. In 1969, the qualifying round of the World Cup was held according to the knockout system. It brought together the national football teams of Honduras and El Salvador. During the first match between the geographical neighbors on June 8th, Honduras won at home with the score 1-0, while the return match on June 15th ended with the victory of El Salvador national team 3-0. At the time, according to the tournament policy, the goal difference did not matter. Therefore, on June 26th, the third match took place between the teams, but on a neutral field in Mexico City. Salvadorians celebrated the victory again, 3-2. The day after the third match, Honduras and El Salvador severed diplomatic relations and began a large-scale mobilization of military forces. The football match, fans' clashes, and riots on the streets acted as the final spark, but the enmity between the countries had accumulated over the years and had deep economic roots. The two countries shared a vast uncontrolled border. El Salvador had a stronger developing economy but experienced a shortage of land. The economic situation of Honduras was noticeably worse, but it owned large unpopulated territories. This forced the residents of El Salvador to migrate to the neighboring state and mainly engage in farming and handicraft. The Salvadorian settlements were illegal and have been growing for dozens of years. In 1962, the government of Honduras adopted a new land reform, the purpose of which was to redistribute the lands in favor of the citizens of Honduras. By the summer of 1969, the number of Salvadorians in Honduras turned out to be about 300,000, that is almost 20% of the total population of the country. Against the backdrop of poverty and tensions, the nationalist movements grew rapidly in Honduras. Many illegal immigrants from El Salvador started to suffer from harassment and were expelled from the country. During this difficult time, the lot brought the football teams of El Salvador and Honduras to play against each other. Both countries experienced drastic economic difficulties, both were managed by the military, and both governments sought to divert public attention from domestic problems and poverty. On July the 14th, that is a month after the first football match between the countries took place, the first comeback actions began. The conflict lasted for only 6 days, but during this time, according to various sources, from 2,000 to 5,000 people had died, and mostly all of them were civilians. In the aftermath, the border was closed, while the trade relations between the countries were ceased. The region was drowned in a deep economic crisis, and after 10 years, a civil war began in El Salvador. So, unlike in a football match, there were no winners in the football war. So what do you think about this episode? Were you interested to learn about these dreadful events in the football history? Let us know in the comments below, and make sure to watch other episodes suggested on the screen. You've been watching Football Geeks, subscribe to our channel, and come back soon!